Good evening. Coming up on BBC London. Concerns for wildlife as thousands of litres of diesel are thought to have spilled into the River Wandle in southwest London.
I've enjoyed nature all my life on this river, and I've photographed kingfishers. I've appeared on the One Show photographing kingfishers on this river, and they're going to die.
Also on the programme tonight.
We're at the Queen Vic in Bermondsey, the pub that inspired the Queen Vic in EastEnders, for a special programme celebrating the show which launched 40 years ago today. We'll be speaking to stars old and new and looking at how the East End of London has changed in those 4 decades.
Hello there, welcome to the programme. Birds coated in oil, struggling to survive. That's what people living close to the River Wandle in southwest London say they've seen after a major diesel spill reportedly leaked from a bus depot storage tank yesterday. It's thought about 4,000 litres of diesel entered through the storm drain system and spread through the river. And as the clean-up operation continues, there are concerns about the long-term damage to the area's ecosystem. Bhavani Vadi reports.
A diesel spillage causing huge damage to wildlife and water quality. Birds have been spotted coated in oil, struggling to clean themselves. Today, barriers were put across the River Wandle to catch the pollution before it spreads further. It's contaminated the Watermead Nature Reserve, where those who enjoy the river are devastated.
I've enjoyed nature all my life on this river, and I've photographed kingfishers. I've appeared on the One Show photographing kingfishers on this river, and they're going to die.
It's awful, isn't it? Because there'll be no food for the fish, no food for the birds. The thing is, you can't exaggerate at the moment because you just don't know quite how bad. But, we don't want to get back to the 60s when the river was called biologically dead.
You can still see diesel flowing through the river here at the Watermead Nature Reserve, and there's this really strong smell. Over there are some coots, and I'm told they're the type of birds that are normally found in the water. Instead, they're avoiding it and taking shelter in the branches. It's thought the leak came from a bus depot storage tank in Thornton Heath in Croydon. The Environment Agency, Thames Water and London Fire Brigade have all been involved in the clean-up.
It's nothing short of an environmental disaster. Over 4,000 litres of diesel have spilled into the River Wandle. We were getting reports last night of birds caked in it and vacating the river. I believe they're still not entering the river now, and we don't know what damage it's done to the river itself over the long run.
And it's affecting quite a large stretch of the river.
That's right, it could be all the way from Wallington through to Wandsworth, eventually hitting the Thames itself. You can really smell it on this part of the river in particular, and it's really visible.
Isabel helps clean up the river and, along with other volunteers, works to protect local wildlife and habitats.
I just hope that whoever is responsible for this is held to account, that the management of that situation is looked at, because it needs to be stopped. We cannot have organisations who are in a position to have this sort of accident that runs into our waterways.
The effect that we're seeing now on birds and otherwise, which is very distressing, is only half of the problem. Over time, this diesel will break down and disperse. It will enter the water column, begin to bind to the sediments. We haven't seen the end of it. This is an ongoing story, an ongoing crisis.
Transport for London said it's working with other agencies to limit any environmental impact and added, a full investigation is underway into what happened. We will play our part in tackling river pollution, both from roads we control and our vehicle fleet. Merton Council has warned people not to touch the water or allow pets into the river. Bhavani Vadi, BBC London.
Let's take a look now at some of the day's other news. Detectives are investigating the fatal stabbing of a 20-year-old man in Hackney last night. Police were called to reports of a fight in Bodney Road just before 6 o'clock. A 25-year-old man and a 23-year-old man have been arrested on suspicion of murder. HSBC says its global head office in Canary Wharf will bear the brunt of a new round of job cuts as it seeks to cut worldwide costs by £1.2 billion by the end of next year. The bank hasn't said how many jobs will go, but it's looking to reduce global staff costs by 8%. 8 out of 10 first-time buyers in London will need to pay stamp duty from April, according to analysis by property website Zoopla. From then, stamp duty discounts will become less generous, with the nil rate band for first-time buyers reducing from £425,000 to £300,000. And you can find more stories on bbc.co.uk/London or on your local BBC website and by using the BBC News app. Now, as you may have been hearing, EastEnders is celebrating its 40th birthday today. This evening, there'll be a 1-hour anniversary episode of the programme, and for the first time ever, you, the audience, will be able to vote to decide on the outcome of a storyline. That episode will be broadcast live tomorrow. But first, I'm going to hand you now to Alice Bandakravi, who's at a very special pub. Alice.
Welcome to the original Queen Vic, the one that inspired the Queen Vic in Albert Square, but this one is in Bermondsey, not in Walford. And like the famous TV pub, this one is full of characters, both behind the bar and the regulars. And we have a full cast of characters to speak to. I'll be speaking to some former cast members and taking a trip down memory lane. And what a 40 years it's been. So much drama, so many hours of television, TV gold. But back in February 1985, programme makers had no idea how successful the show was going to be, how loved and how important. At the time, the BBC spoke to some real EastEnders to find out what they made of it.
I think we're very misunderstood people. We have a lot of laughter, a lot of fun. That is true about the punch-ups, that last scene. That does happen. But the next minute they could be speaking and buying a drink and all be friends again.
It seemed a little bit, fictitious.
Are you going to watch this programme? Oh, yeah, I shall watch it. Yeah, of course I will. If it's about the East End of London, I shall watch it.
Well, I promised you some famous faces from Albert Square. Let me take you back a few decades with my guests. Linda Davidson, Michelle Gale, thank you so much for being here with us this evening. Linda, you played Mary the Punk back in 1985. Take us back to that time. You joined this unknown series. What was it like?
Well, it was called a bi-weekly drama. It wasn't called a soap, so we had no clue that we were in a soap opera. But being cast was incredible for me. I didn't have a telephone, so we arranged to meet in the phone box on the corner of my road to tell me whether I got the job or not. So I pitched up to this phone box and their phone rang, and it was actually the costume department finding out what size my feet were. So I knew I'd got the job.
Did you know you were going to be a punk?
No.
So what was that like?
Then I got the scripts, and of course she was this... Well, Tony Holland had seen this little, tiny, fragile character with a pram and a baby, all, in punk makeup. And he thought that she was very, very vulnerable, and he reimagined this character, which is what Mary became, a complete antidote to the excesses of the 80s, really.
And so representative of that time, Michelle Gale, you played Hattie, one of the first, I think the first black family to live in Albert Square. Obviously the show was established by the time you joined. What was it like when you got the job?
Well, the first person I told was my grandma, because that was probably the proudest day of her life, actually, because she loves EastEnders, and they've known I'd done a few auditions for it. So I think I was really ecstatic for myself, but ecstatic for my family, because they'd invested so much of their time into allowing me to do drama and dance and to express myself in that way. So it seemed like a reward for them for all their investment in me.
And did either of you have any sense then that 40 years later we would be here still watching the show?
No.
It's quite a feat, isn't it? What do you put that down to, Linda?
I think some of the storylines are very engaging. I think they always cast really great actors. I mean, I would say that all night, but I think they do. And I think also there's a timeliness about it. And of course, you're drawn into the Vic and all of the other buildings around. So I think it's a combination of and great script writing most of the time.
Of course. Well, Linda Davidson, Michelle Gale, thank you so much for being here with us this evening. And of course, lots has happened in the 40 years since that first show. Our reporter Wendy Hurrell has been speaking to Chris, Ron, Reg and Safe, real EastEnders, to explore what has changed since the 80s and if Cockney identity remains.
People say, oh, I miss the old East End, yeah. What do you miss? Is it the outside toilets or the old tin bath that used to drag in front of the fire every Friday night and then take turns to get in, you know? Is it that you miss? No, it's not. You miss being young. We all miss that.
Chris, the East End poet, not romanticising his old manor, Mile End, though it is tempting with a place of such history and character. The truth is, the East End is ever changing.
So the City of London is here, and this is the East End. It's the East End of the city.
Okay. Reg has been a Fleet Street photographer, cleaned windows, worked in a treacle factory and helped with town planning as a Tower Hamlets councillor.
We have, I suppose you could say, it's almost a contemporary map of London. This was produced by the London County Council, because this is the time when tower blocks appeared. We lived in a house overlooking a canal. From there we moved into a prefab, and then we were given basically one choice, because it's coming down and you've got to go. And we moved into a tower block. And our plan at the time, when I think back, basically created lots and lots of council housing, but not many jobs to go with that development.
Big buildings, big money replace the docks now, once one of the biggest employers in the 60s, as East End people moved to council homes in places like the Isle of Dogs.
In the docks itself, it was not going to work. It was like going to meet your friends.
Ron was an officer of the Stevedores and Dockers Union. The last ship was offloaded in 1981, not long before the TV show EastEnders first aired.
At that particular time, you've got to realise the East End was made up of family communities. So if you went in a certain street, you could safely bet half of that street was related to one another. And once the docks closed, they moved people out to other areas, and it broke up that family circle that you had there.
And the rapid change continued through that decade.
In the 80s, I think, when Mrs Thatcher, God bless her, sold everybody their council places, and then 2 years later they all sold them for a huge profit and when they moved out of the country. I think that had a huge impact on the East End, to be very honest. But it was very, once again, huge impact, because you had a huge swathe of people moving out. And when you get a huge swathe of people moving out, you get a huge swathe of people moving in.
Migration has defined the East End, Huguenots followed by Jewish, now Bangladeshis. Political activism is the other thread running through the years. Today's fight for modern Cockneys is against the creep of commercial development.
We are seeing huge changes, and so, you know, as local people we have to sometimes fight it. We have to also be able to negotiate our space within the city, and sometimes that's very difficult. And so with campaigns like the Save Brick Lane campaign, we've really tried to push for local issues. You can see from the placards behind me that there's lots of issues. There's a cumulative impact of these developments, and often it means pushing people out.
But the East End identity remains.
If you walk down Brick Lane, Bethnal Green, Whitechapel, you'll still see that the bedrock of the East End is still there, that it's a place where working communities come together, find opportunities, interact with their neighbours, and it's still there. I don't buy into this idea that the East End has actually broken up. It's still here, it's still living and breathing.
I still walk down the road and see people I knew from way back when, or their kids and stuff, you know. So, yeah, there is something about it. There's something about that East End thing.
Wendy Hurrell, BBC London.
Now, we're going to fast forward to the 2000s now with my next guests, Ricky Norwood. I hate calling you Fat Boy, but that was your name.
It's all right. people say it with love, so it's no problem at all.
I'm saying it with love. Adam Crosdale, you played Dr. Al Jenkins, and of course Ellen Thomas, you played Claudette. Thank you for joining me at the bar here. Ricky,
Yes.
you describe yourself as a real EastEnder. So when you were cast in EastEnders, were you just playing yourself?
No, but I knew what EastEnders needed. So when I came into the show, what they didn't have was the younger street style element in that show at that particular time. So I knew that I needed to bring that forward as well. But yeah, born and bred in Forest Gate, East London. And I just, you know, when I got cast in the show, I was just like, okay, cool. This is what it needs. It needed a little bit of sparkle from East London.
I like it. Adam, you caused a bit of a stir when you arrived because you replaced the much-loved Dr. Legg to some people's great delight.
Look, there's no replacing Dr. Legg, but I was delighted to be there. So anybody who enjoyed that happening, thanks very much for supporting that.
And
I'm the antithesis of like East End sparkle. I was sort of a posh boy who came onto the square and tried to fix things to the best
and
of
what
his
was that
ability.
like for you as an actor? I know you now live in LA, so was EastEnders the platform which kind of launched your career?
Well, it certainly helped. I had just got my green card around about the same time, so having the EastEnders credentials behind me didn't hurt at all. I'm very grateful for my time
One of the
on
biggest
show.
shows in the country. Ellen, you played, am I right in thinking that you played Claudette, but you played several characters in the show?
Yes, in the last 30 years, yes.
Lots of drama, as we know, some of it quite over the top. But EastEnders is famous for touching some of the big issues.
Yes.
And do you think that's one of the reasons it's so successful?
Absolutely. I think we got the first cross-dressing character on EastEnders, myself and the other actor. It looked like we were having an affair, but of course he was cross-dressing and I was his confidant.
And you must all have some fond memories. I wish we could carry on and reminisce, but we've got to move on because over the years there have been some famous cameos, including Boris Johnson and Robbie Williams and our very own Riz Lateef.
CCTV footage taken from the bus on the night of the murder has been released by police in the hope that it might prompt new information to come to light.
Now, tonight's landmark episode is going to be a 1-hour special tomorrow. The show is being brought to us live for only the 9th time in its history. And if you've been following some of the most recent storylines, you'll know that a lot of the action takes place in the pub and to the pub. Now, one of the pivotal characters in EastEnders has always been the pub landlady, and the current boss behind the bar is Elaine Peacock, played by Harriet Thorpe. And I was lucky enough to meet her on the set at Elstree.
You are a sad, weak woman, Linda. We are done.
Well, I hope the champagne's on ice.
Mum, what are you doing here?
Well, I thought it was time to admit its new queen.
Harriet, here we are on set here in Walford East, your new home. What's it been like since you joined the EastEnders family?
It's been absolutely amazing, thrilling, exciting.
You're loving this, aren't you?
Really? Feels like the worst night of my life.
Oh, you're such a drama queen. Making it all about you.
I'm not.
When you think about your character and how to play her and who's played similar roles in the past, and I'm thinking particularly of Barbara Windsor in The Pub, have you had to reinvent or invent a character who is different,
Absolutely.
but also a subtle nod to that
Absolutely,
kind
a
of landlady?
salute to all those women, always. But again, it's a different woman. And whereas she sometimes, rather than saying scream something, she might say, get out.
Can I have a word? Just a quiet little word, me and George.
Thanks. What one? Oh.
Yes, of course I shout sometimes, and, you know, I've slapped a couple of people, which is new to me in my life, because I never hit anyone ever.
How did that feel?
Horrific and liberating.
Really?
Yeah, I'm now a fully qualified slapper. I think I've said that many times. I never thought I would be, but I am.
I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, thank you.
And that look was a bit intimidating when you told me to get out.
Yeah.
Listen, I know I've made mistakes, But I've always tried to be a good mum to you.
Oh, really? When I was at my most vulnerable, what did you do? You told me to go to Dean, lie about what he'd done to save George's skin.
I was wrong, I said. I'm so sorry.
It's now the 40th anniversary of EastEnders. It's an amazing landmark year and a landmark episode.
Absolutely.
How do you feel about this particular episode live?
It's thrilling and exciting. And again, everyone is anxious it's alive. But we've all done theatre, you do live broadcasting. You know, you can't care. You have to be in the moment and play that moment. And if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. It doesn't matter.
I suppose the difference between what we do and theatre even is that this episode and others like it are very dynamic. There are a lot of people in all sorts of places. I mean, that is quite a feat. Is it the first time you've done something like that?
I've done lots of live stuff, but nothing quite as elaborate and extraordinary because of all the reality of walking out of a door in one place and coming into it from another. You know, it's all completely separate venues. But the brilliance is all the people who've been involved, how they've created this puzzle that they've made work is fantastic.
We cannot wait to see it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Harriet Thorpe there. So tonight we have the 1 hour episode at 7:30 where you get to decide where some of the plot points go from here. You can join in by voting online to take part in the drama, choosing which storyline you like best. And tomorrow will be the live action episode. So it's all to play for. Now it's time to get the weather with Louise Lear. Louise, is it all to play for?
Well, there's a bit of a dramatic storyline with the weather in actual fact, and I'm sure some of the EastEnders producers keeping a pretty close eye on the story because we started the week in London at around 6 degrees. We're going to finish the working week at 16 degrees. So Albert Square at the moment currently around 7 Celsius. What's going to happen tomorrow? Download the weather app and find out what's happening in your area. But I can illustrate to you the point that is developing at the moment. The plot twist is this wet and windy weather is going to arrive through the night tonight, and it's all about the change of wind direction. It's going to be dragging in some incredibly mild air. So just a few days ago, we started off at -6 in the morning. Here we could see temperatures around 6 to 9 degrees. Quite a cloudy, murky start to the day, and there will be some showery outbreaks of rain on and off throughout the day, the heaviest which will be to the south of the Thames. But there will also be some brighter glimpses from time to time. And look at these temperatures, highs of around 12 or 13 degrees. Now, as we move into Friday, the winds will strengthen further. We're likely to see gale force gusts out to the west, and there's another spell of wet weather arriving. So it's going to be a windy day. We could see gusts of winds over the capital around 35 to 40 miles an hour, still from a southerly direction, so still a mild source. The rain should stay away until the end of the day. Look at these temperatures, though, 15 degrees. That is pretty good for this time of year. Not a bad start into the weekend. Saturday, the better of the 2 days. But then as we move into Sunday, yes, there's more wet and windy weather. The wind direction still coming from the southwest. So we are going to keep this milder theme with us for a few more days. Let's look ahead, try and put some detail on it for you then. As we move into the weekend, Saturday, drier and quieter. Rain by the end of the day on Sunday, and temperatures again still staying mild. A little less mild potentially as we go into next week, but we could see a return of some sunshine as well. So dramatic storyline with the weather. I'm sure it's not going to be as dramatic as the storyline in EastEnders in around half an hour's time. Back to you, Alice.
Louise, thank you very much. Well, in the last 40 years, EastEnders has given us thousands of hours of television, almost 7,000 episodes, and it will no doubt give us many more years of drama in its own inimitable way. So for now, I will leave you with some of those moments, and from all of us here at the Queen Vic in Bermondsey, the original Queen Vic, we wish you good night.
Happy Christmas, Ian.